So, friends, our service is going to begin with the tradition of escorting the casket, Levayat Hamet in Hebrew, and we're going to ask the individuals who have been honored to escort Stephen's casket. It would be Julie, Matthew, Lewis, Carl, and Steve. If you could please meet me at the back of the hearse. So we're here at this burial service, and our tradition is a very interesting tradition that even before we can even open our mouths, even before we have the words to even express ourselves, we have a feeling that we need to express, and then we do that with an ancient act that was called kriya. Kriya is the Hebrew word to tear. It's also a similar word in Hebrew to announce. And there's many reasons given with anything Jewish. And just to offer two very quick ones. One is the soul is on the inside. Our body is what we wear, and no matter how well dressed we might be, it's really just the external, the outside. But we know that the soul, the love, the memory, and all these relationships that we have with Steve, those are going to continue on. And the other one is more practical. Our life is not going to be the same. And so we want to, even before we could even share anything, even if we could have some of the words, which we'll hear in just a few moments, we want to make that tear. So if I could ask you both to rise. We're going to say this blessing. Repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Dayan ha'emet. Amen. It means blessed are you, God, ruler of the universe, the judge of truth. Now we're going to tear the ribbon. Friends, there's some chairs available, and again, please have a seat. So in a similar vein, as we're entering into this service, we turn to our tradition, to the words that have been written before us, the words of King David, the sweet singer of Israel. And there's a custom to start with the 23rd Psalm, which I'm going to read in the traditional Hebrew, and then we're going to have our friend Gail, who's going to do the English. Everybody's welcome to follow it along inside the inside portion of your pamphlet folder. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Rovo, Lo Yechesod, Benois Deshayar Bitzeni, Al Mei Menucho, Voizina Haleni Nafshi Yeshevi Vanchini B'Magle Tzedek Leman Shemoi, Gam Ki Elech B'Geitz, Al Moves Lo Yiraro, Ki Ato Yimodi, Shivtecho Mishantecho Hei, Mayinachamoni, Taroich Lefanai Shulchan Neged Sarai, Tishanta b'Hashem enoishi koi siri vayoi achtoi v'chesed yidufuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti b'beis Adonai elorech yamim. And now we're going to have Gail and those who wish to join in English.
Good morning. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yes, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
So friends, we're here gathered to pay our respect, to show our appreciation and our love to our friend Stephen Ray Tucker, affectionately known as Tuck. I'm sure everybody read the piece by now. Incredible piece. I'm talking about the Sun Times piece, because I know there's going to be others. We're joined here with Shelley and Lori, Aaron, Matthew, Lewis, Julie, Henry, Quinn, Lila, Maxwell, Susan, Karen, Danielle, and obviously all of their spouses and their relatives. And I know I'm going to be leaving out everybody, but I just wanted to read that list. So we're going to hear some words and some memories from the people that loved and knew him best. And we're going to start with Shelley and Lori.
On December 5th, 1949, our brother, see how far I'm going to get through this. Our brother Steve was born on the south side of Chicago. He was a beautiful platinum blonde baby boy. 15 months later, I arrived. Steve and I spent time together in a double stroller in our early years in the Hyde Park neighborhood. 2.5 years after that, Lori joined the family. We moved to Glencoe when Steve was 6 and settled into our new life on the North Shore. We have many memories of Steve as a child. He collected baseball cards and Mad magazines. He started a business selling frozen Kool-Aid on a stick, which he called Yumpsicles. He would walk around the neighborhood dragging his little red wagon filled with his frozen treats. In later years, he spent hours shooting baskets on the driveway and caddying and playing golf at the Glencoe course. During high school, Steve also had jobs working at the audiovisual department at our temple and working as a waiter at the local deli. Our mom went into the deli during his first week working there and was aghast to find him serving a cup of coffee with his thumb submerged in the liquid. She quickly straightened that out. Steve and his New Trier friends didn't date much. Instead, they would meet up at one of their homes and spend the entire weekend playing APBA baseball. APBA stands for American Professional Baseball League. It was a kind of reality board game simulating pro baseball with a card representing each player and the players acting as managers. They would camp out for entire weekends playing night and day. When it was time for graduation, Steve and his friends wanted to attend the dance at New Trier, so they ended up taking me and 2 of my friends as dates. It was a particularly memorable event because after the dance, we went to a club in the city, Mr. Kelly's, and saw Woody Allen perform. Steve was innately smarter than we were, surpassing us with SAT scores. He was gifted in mathematics, so we were surprised later in life when he showed such talent for writing, especially since Steve never handed in an assignment without help from our mom. Steve attended University of Iowa, where his major was sociology, but we knew it was really bridge. He spent more time traveling to national tournaments to accumulate master points than he did any actual studying. He did become a life master during his college years, which was a real accomplishment, just not what he was supposed to be doing. After college, he landed a job trading at the Mercantile Exchange and remained there for a number of years.
Steve, from a very young age, was passionate about sports. We are sure that began when our dad, Norman, took him regularly to innumerable sporting events. He had season tickets to the Bears and Northwestern football, as well as attending hockey, baseball, and taking frequent trips to the track for horse races. So it is no wonder that Steve had an ingrained love of sports. For some reason unknown to us, but we hope someone here might be able to enlighten us, he became a stringer, writing stories for high school girls basketball, which led him to his career as a full-time sports reporter and editor for the Sun-Times. The enormity of his success and his impact on the world of high school girls basketball only recently became clear to us as we went through old mementos, finding numerous awards. He was a man ahead of his time for sure, fighting for equal opportunities for women in sports. He won many awards for excellence in journalism, exceptional writing coverage, including induction into the Illinois Basketball Coaches Association Hall of Fame for news media. As important as the awards and recognition were to Steve, he valued the friendships and close relationships he developed even more. Steve did a much better job of choosing friends than he did choosing wives. And that is for sure. That's an understatement. Some of these friendships were with coaches from high schools or colleges whose games he frequented. Others he met because their daughters were on teams he coached or covered. His friends from this world knew him as Tuck. They didn't care that he was overweight, that he often dressed in comfortable but not always the most appropriate clothing. They accepted Tuck as he was. When Steve had brain surgery in 2008, we began to learn things about Steve that we never knew. As we sat for many hours while Steve was in surgery, a number of his friends and coworkers showed up at the hospital. We remember meeting Doug Bruno and Dave Power, two coaches who were good friends of his. We also were introduced to Daryl and McNick and their wives. It seemed like the Kips and McNicks had kind of adopted Steve as a part of their families. When I thanked them for their support, we were told that Steve sat with Daryl's wife Marianne and their daughters all day when Daryl, who was Steve's closest friend at the time, had bypass surgery, and how he was at the hospital when Nick's daughter gave birth to their son. He spent many holidays with them. When our family was in Vermont for Thanksgiving and Steve couldn't go because he had to cover tournaments the day after in Bloomington. I remember him searching for the perfect gift for each family member for Christmas and each wedding he attended.
Steve always had many close friends. In more recent years, after moving to the Marion, he developed many new and meaningful relationships. One in particular was his friend David. Steve and David were together all the time, dining at the same table, attending concerts and operas at Northwestern, and nightly watching sporting events in their rooms. During the time Steve was doing dialysis at home and had to remain in his room after hooking up, David would come and sit in a chair with Steve, watching TV together all evening. David's family invited Steve to celebrate holidays with them, which he always enjoyed. At the Marion, he had many friends that meant the world to him. Too many to mention by name, or we would be here all afternoon. Steve treated every person he met at the Marion with friendship and respect, from Paul and Sidra at the front desk to Luce, who cleaned his room, Angelo, who drove him to dialysis, Alberto and his many servers in the dining room. He got to know each and every one, asking about their families and being anxious to meet their kids. We began to refer to him as the mayor of the Marion. If Steve was your friend, he would go to the end of the earth to support or help you. He was always ready with a warm hug and a smile, making sure no one was left out or forgotten. Steve had FOMO, fear of missing out, long before it was a catchphrase. There was never an invite that he declined. Steve was non-judgmental and unusually accepting of people from varied backgrounds, races, and ages. There was almost a childlike innocence about him. His love of games extended beyond sports and bridge to chess, backgammon, Monopoly, and in more recent years, adding regular games of Mahjong, Canasta, and Scrabble.
Another of Steve's passions began when our Aunt Dee Dee took him to the opera. From then on, he was a major fan, regularly attending performances at the Lyric, traveling to Santa Fe several times to attend the opera, and going with our mother to the UK to attend a concert at Glyndebourne. When attending opera with Steve, you could be sure his eyes would close as the lights went down, but he would always be wide awake by the second act. Going through Steve's room, we found quite a collection of autographs from famous people he had met during his life, including Joe Louis, Gene Autry, Jackie Robinson, Gail Sayers, Vanessa Redgrave, as well as photos with John Kerry and many other sports enthusiasts would know, which we do not.
Steve has not had the easiest life. He has had numerous health challenges. Because of this, I have been Steve's constant companion over the past 6 years, spending much time together, attending concerts, operas, and celebrating holiday events. Despite the extent of his medical problems, he never complained. He did what he had to do, always with a smile and positive attitude. Steve was what we call a yenta. He loved to talk to people, tell them his stories, and hear theirs, never wanting to be left out of anything. Over the past week, we have spoken to and heard from many people whose lives Steve impacted. We have heard many heartwarming stories from people near and far. Steve always had a good story to tell.
Unfortunately, we lost our beloved father far too soon. Steve was very strongly affected by this loss. He maintained frequent contact with our mom and with us as well as our children and grandchildren. He loved hearing the success stories of his niece Julie and his nephews Aaron, Matthew, and Louis, and was always excited for the opportunity to see his great nephews Henry and Max and great nieces Quinn and Lila. We will miss your never-ending stories, your frequent butt calls, and puns that made us laugh. You are one unique guy, and you will be greatly missed. We love you.
Thank you, Shelley and Lori, for your beautiful words. We're now going to have the opportunity to hear from two sets of friends. First, we're going to hear from Marion and Doug, followed by Julie and Matthew. Marion and Doug are going to share their thoughts, and followed by some correspondence from Julie and Matthew. Why don't you stand over here? I'll make it a little safer.
Well, Lori covered it pretty much. We met him, of course, through basketball, and he was sometimes Taylor Bell started covering girls basketball tremendously. I was going to bring this huge sign. It's 4 foot by 3 of a basketball banquet they had to celebrate the best girls in the tournaments and the leagues of our area. It was outstanding. They took them to dinners, they celebrated them, and they absolutely began to feel like special people, which had not been the case before sometimes, started promoting them. It was amazing how many lives Steve touched through basketball, not just with the Sun Times, but then through Hustle. We traveled with him, usually Daryl, but I sometimes tagged along, and got to see the fun they had. These girls didn't just become players. They became friends and had so much fun. I could tell some stories I won't, but they had so much fun trying to find a place for dinner, trying to find a place for lunch, trying to find New Mexico at all. And I understand they got lost trying to find, Virginia. They were supposed to be in Norfolk, and they were in Richmond. So, of course, the coaches and basketball players were a little upset, but Steve handled it well. They got there on time. It was all good. They finally decided, okay, no more buses, we'll go by plane. That worked out much better. The plane usually got them where they needed to be. Then there are these times when they would go and they'd get a hometown referee. And the Hustle would get hosed by the hometown referee. One time, Steve was so upset, he found out the name of this deacon who was the referee, and this was before DoorDash and before PayPal, and he ordered them 20 pizzas to be delivered that they could buy. So he got even, and Daryl and I love to watch his little ornery laugh. You've seen it when he's, having fun, trying to fix things, and then he has this little glint of, I'm going to get even. And he did. He was so much fun. He shared so much love with the people he was around. He, of course, was close with Daryl and I, our kids, any kids that he met through basketball. And like you said, picked out presents. She said everything I was going to say. But anyway, it's Steve. That's who he was. He was so involved. He loved life. He loved wonderful things he became part of, and he hated to give it up. And as I watched him face all the obstacles of health he went through, his courage and his laughter and his energy to get involved in everything that he loved to do never dwindled. I never saw him unhappy. I never heard him complain. He was just always enjoying every part of life. There are so many girls that I can't count that received scholarships because of the things he did and the stories he wrote in the Hustle program. They were able to go on to college, some who wouldn't have been able to at all, got scholarships, went on to have wonderful successes in their life. There were hundreds. I think about how many years he did Hustle and how many girls played those games and got those scholarships, and I really can't count. The other thing I know is how much he loved his family. When we get together, holiday, no holiday, whenever, he always talked about what they did, how successful they were, so proud of all the kids, and he really loved his family and his friends. And those of us who knew him are blessed and will miss him terribly. And like she said, he sat with my husband every night while he tried to beat pancreatic cancer, and he sat there and stayed with him, the patience of a saint. So thank you, Tucker. We'll miss you forever.
Can I just grab it? Steve's legacy, in addition to being a great brother, a great uncle, and a great friend to us all, has been stated as Steve Tucker grew the game, helped grow the game. And what people are talking about is he helped grow the game of women's basketball here in Chicago, but also across the country. And what does it mean to grow the game? And there are writers here today, and 8 to 10% today of coverage of sports is of women. And to be able or willing to go into a boardroom, editorial boardroom, and fight for space in the newspaper for women, the editors always say the same things. The same thing. We don't have the manpower, we don't have the space. Taylor Bell hired Steve, and Steve was manpower of one, and that manpower of one is what's helped create the great game of women's basketball here in Chicago and across the country. Steve's responsible for that. You know, when you choose to coach, you have to ask yourself, why do you coach? And most of us, Coach McEwen is here from Northwestern with us today, coach for 3 reasons. You love the relationships, you love to teach, and you love to compete. And it comes back to the relationships. Steve Tucker did something here in Chicago that I don't think he woke up one day and said, I'm going to do this. But when you love to compete, competition in sports doesn't mean you like one another. So what Tuck did as a writer for the Sun-Times is he brought together forces that didn't like one another. High school coaches that competed against each other but didn't like one another all of a sudden understood that they were a family of one. College coaches that had to compete against each other but didn't like each other all of a sudden understood that they were a family of one. And Tuck didn't just say, I'm going to do this one day, but that's what he did through his writing, but through his relationships. And Tuck was a relationship guy, and we wouldn't be here today if he wasn't. And from this point forward, what we got is the great memories, remember the great times of our friend Steve Tucker. Thanks, everybody.
We're going to invite Julie and Matthew to share some correspondence.
I am Julie, Steve's niece. We hope this is okay. We saw a lot of postings on social media about Steve, so I don't know if the people are here that wrote this, but we hope it's okay. We're going to read some of the things that we saw that kind of touched us when we were reading them. So this is someone that had posted on Facebook about Steve. My friend and mentor Steve Tucker died today. His impact on Chicago journalism, not just in sports, is immense. Tuck gave us so many of our first real shot. If you read any news about the city this week, you'll read a reporter that Tuck took a chance on and made better. I owe my entire journalism career to Tucker. I simply would not be here without him. There isn't a single day that goes by when I don't think of something he said. It's about the kids. Runs through my mind whenever I start writing about a coach or an adult. Tucker was a character. Everyone who met him has a Tucker story. A large, loud, and occasionally obnoxious guy. He rubbed many the wrong way, but he loved his people with a giant, forgiving heart. It's hard to believe he's gone. Steve Tucker advocated for women's sports coverage before the WNBA was created. I think he had his scoop on the sky existing. Tuck believed Candace Parker was as worthy of newspaper coverage as Derrick Rose, long before that was popular. The Sun-Times kept track of cell phone minutes. Tucker usually had the most. He was proud of it, constantly on the phone with sources all over the city and the suburbs. That's what it took to stay up to date on news for 400 schools. I still rely on a lot of that network today. Tucker was never on Twitter. He called people, often dozen times a day. I'd like to call him right now and remind him how important he was to so many of us. Here's another. Taylor Bell and Tuck were the first men that made boys and girls high school basketball something very special. First, Taylor, Steve's mentor with the Daily News, and all of those box scores from all the boys' games played over the weekend. It was really something to look forward to. Then the Daily News morphed into the Sun-Times, and with girls' basketball starting to grow, and then came along Steve. He personally blew the game up to heights never seen before, and many reporters and writers followed suit because of him. I have many fond memories and stories. I could spend hundreds and maybe thousands of hours with him on the phone. Over the years, he came to many games to see the Fenwick Friars play, so many that the girls nicknamed him Friar Tuck. All the girls' coverage, basketball and softball, the articles, and many pics of players' coaches is pretty much gone. And now Steve, being referred to as the GOAT, Tucker is gone as well. But his legacy will last forever. I'm sure Steve and Daryl are already cooking up something.
I'll read a couple more. Memories of Steve always bring a smile to your face. I recall the many enjoyable times we had together, planning coverage of girls' basketball and softball games, attending the games Steve dragged along and made me a fan, organizing the girls' basketball and softball banquets, planning the paper Sunday coverage, selecting the all-Chicago area teams and Player of the Year awards. Steve truly was a pioneer who gave girls' high school sports a front-page face in Chicago. Steve was one of the absolute best reporters. He'll forever be a part of my softball memories. Steve was such a huge champion of women's sports in the 80s. He worked and wrote tirelessly on our behalf. His coverage of girls' basketball during that time helped so many of us realize our dreams at the collegiate level. I have had a brotherly relationship with Steve for over 30 years because of girls' basketball. He meant a lot to us, and he let us know that we meant a lot to him. Steve, the man who understands, no matter the color, we're all sisters and brothers. You help those in need, and you plant a seed in mind, body, and soul with wisdom, nuggets of gold. Even though you're not here, I see your spirit very clear. You and Coach Kip are now together, smiling and laughing, praying that here on earth things will get better. So Steve, I'm not really saying goodbye, because every time I look up, I'll see your smile and laugh in the sky. We love you, Tucker. And then, simple, he was a great guy with a big heart. Steve was a major force in the media toward recognizing girls' basketball. He, more than anybody at the Sun-Times, made sure the girls got the coverage they deserved. So, as everyone can tell from these snippets and everything that everyone else has said today, Steve was a very special person, and we're all lucky to have had and been involved with him at some point in some capacity in our lives. And it's so great to see how many lives that he's touched, and we're all very lucky in that respect. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to have several readings by Sandy, Susan, and followed by Eileen. We'll start first with Sandy.
At the rising sun and at its going down, we remember them. At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of the autumn, we remember them. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us. We remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. When we have joy to crave, when we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them. For as long as we live, they too will live. For they are now a part of us. We remember them.
Hi, I'm Cousin Susan. There are stars up above so far away, we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember, we remember. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember, we remember.
I first met Steve around the time he turned 6. My father brought me to his house so we could meet our new neighbors, the Tuckers. We learned that Shelley and I were the same age, so I stayed at the house for hours. Steve was dressed as Superman, and I can vividly remember him jumping off of furniture and saying, "I am Superman," and this went on for quite a while. Through the years, he made friends easily and held them close. You've heard all of this already, and it's so true. He had many happy years, loved his job as a reporter and editor, and then started a new life and developed new friendships when he moved to the Marion. He faced some serious health challenges, but remained positive and always looked to the future. I was honored to be asked to read Life is a Journey, which I did not write, by the way, at Steve's funeral. I will always remember him. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or from strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until, not looking backwards or ahead, we see that victory lies not. I'm missing something here. I'm missing a line. But step by step, life is a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey. And I'm sorry about the missing line.
It's a funny thing, memory. We don't always remember the parts that we missed, in the Jewish tradition, we have this concept called Yizkor. We will remember. There's history, there's the facts, but in the Jewish thought, there's this idea of remembering forward. And I invite everybody, as we have our last prayer here, last few prayers, to make new memories using Steve's, what he wrote, what he taught, what he introduced to this great community that we have in front of us and the greater, broader world that he impacted. So as we remember, it's actually an act. It's not just the fact, the history, it's taking it forward. And it's sort of the challenge that we accept on his behalf. We ask him to rest easy, knowing that we have the mission as a family, as a community. I'm now going to recite the memorial prayer, first in the Hebrew, and then follow together. We can all do it inside on the inside portion of your folder. El Malei Rachamim. That was a very long rabbinic pause. Im gedoyshim toyerim kizoraraki yamazirim es nishma Steven ben Ephraim Natan sheholach le'olam moi im balarachamim hiyasdirei u'b'seisik nefol yo'elomim yitzrorachayim es nishma osoi Adonai hu nachalasoi v'nuach b'sholem al mishkavoi v'noim amen. Together in English. El Malei Rachamim, O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of thy presence among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament unto the soul of Stephen Ray Tucker Tuck, who has gone into eternity. Lord of mercy, bring him under the cover of thy wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be God's possession, and may his repose be peace. And let us all say, Amen. On the back portion of this folder, you'll find the most sacred prayer that we have in the Jewish faith, and that, of course, is the prayer that links the living with those who have departed. It's known as the Kaddish. The Kaddish doesn't speak about anything about death. It's adjectives about God, about the world, the greatness of the world that we live in. And one is forced to sort of maybe think that this prayer was chosen and was selected to be said at these occasions and these times because it's exactly what we have in front of us. The greatness of the world that we live in that was made possible by people like Stephen. Through his actions, through his agency, the world is now a better place. And so we think about that and we meditate that as we say these words. And at the very end, we'll have our famous hope, which is the only prayer that we ever really pray for. It's peace. And the irony is we're minus one in our life and in the world. But we know that we hope Stephen's in a place where he can make the world a little better, because we need all the help we can get. So we'll sing it together, and then maybe at the end we'll do Oseh Shalom. If you're able to rise, please rise. Only if you're able. And please, if you know, you could say it with me. If you don't know, you could just say Amen at the appropriate response. Yiskadal, Yiskadash, Shemei Rabbah. Yomad, Yivrach Girusei, V'yamlich Machusei, B'chayechon, V'yomechon, B'chayedech Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, V'zman Kariv, V'yamru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, Le'olam Ulmei Omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramaz v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shemei d'kedusha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata ta'amiran b'yama v'yimru amen. Yehei shlomo rabba min shemaya l'chayim aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom Aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yakol Yisrael Yimru, Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael. Friends, you may be seated for just a moment. So we have a very, raise your hand if you know the word mitzvah. It's like an English word. The biggest mitzvah that we have as a community, as a family, as an individual, is the opportunity to lay somebody to rest, to physically take part in their burial. For it is a chesed shalemet, it is an act of kindness for which there could be no reward. And so you'll see in just a few moments, everybody's going to have an opportunity to step forward and to place several measures of earth into the grave as an act of love, as an act of kindness. Some people have the custom to do 3 measures. You can do however many you feel you're able. Some people have the custom of putting it back into the mound. Let each individual take this shovel for themselves. Everybody has their own relationship with Tuck. I feel I can't even call it. I didn't know him. I feel it's a personal. We're going to start with this little bag of earth. This is a bag of earth which is from the Mount of Olives, which is the oldest cemetery we have in the Jewish faith. It's right outside the old city of Jerusalem, because we're all connected. We all come from different places. We all moving around this world, but the truth is we're all united. We're all connected as a family, and it is our hope and it is our belief that we'll be connected once again in the future. Okay?
Yeah.
I was just recently reminded of another tradition, a beautiful tradition. We all know that one of the greatest abilities people have as a writer is to observe things from a different angle, to write things that maybe nobody else saw. And I haven't yet reviewed, and I hope to review all of Stephen's great writings available online. One of the traditions that we have is that the first shovelful that we lovingly and deliberately take to bury someone, we do it with the shovel turned not upside down. It's the wrong way to do it. The least effective. The shovel should be this way. We're doing it that way. And the idea is the world we see in front of us. There's many ideas. The one that's probably giving in New York is it's different. But I have another one. Something that maybe a writer would say. Is the world we see in front of us is topsy-turvy. The world we see in front of us is full of contradictions, things we can't possibly understand, but we hope and we pray. Maybe Stephen's in a place, we know he's in a place, what's down is up and what's up is down. Is the ultimate clarity. So it's a little bit of a sort of a assurance to ourselves as we take that first shovel upside down. We don't get it. We hope that he does, and we hope that he can maybe be an influence in our life in that regard. So for those who are able, the first shovelful, because you know they'll be doing it this way, is to maybe do it upside down. Okay. In just a moment, they're going to place the cover. Of course, I have to move. I'm just going to take this opportunity because it was mentioned before, and I think it's such a beautiful concept. Stephen was very involved with Hustle, as many people have mentioned and have written about. Memorial contributions in his memory can be made to the Stephen Tucker Memorial Scholarship, which was set up at Hustle. That address and some information, some beautiful written information about what they're doing and what their mission is, can be found on the pamphlet that you received on your way into the funeral today. And for those who are online, that information is on the funeral home website. Following our service here today, everybody's going to have an opportunity in just a few moments to take part in the burial, after which our service will be concluded. Upon return from the cemetery, the family will be sitting Shiva until 9 p.m. today at the residence 1580 Sherman Avenue, Unit 901.